tough one. You look at the week, 5 working days ahead. Well, that's the situation for many people. In March this year, a 4-day working week SA pilot program began. This after similar projects in other countries showed that working 4 days a week did not impact productivity negatively. Now, a second South African pilot study is due to kick off next month. The 6-month study is done with no loss of pay and no increased hours on the 4 working days. And I'm joined now by Lowe. She's head of the 4-day week SA pilot. Corinne, thank you so much for joining us. We chatted, I think, just as you were starting the first pilot. Now you're planning for the second. My understanding is the first pilot ends at the end of this month. What can you tell us about the progress?
Hi, Sally. Thank you so much for having me. Good evening to all your listeners as well, all your viewers. It's been an exciting 6 months. I can't believe we're 2 weeks away from the end of our first pilot. The results have been very, very encouraging to date, Sally. So we're literally 2 weeks away from that 6-month pilot that you've referenced, where 28 South African companies and 1 Botswanan company decided to participate in the 4-day week trial. And our early results that are coming in from Boston College and Stellenbosch Business School, that are our academic research partners on this, are very, very encouraging. What is very interesting to sort of understand is that the South African businesses are not quite as progressive as our global counterparts in managing to get to the full 20% of the reduced work week. So you'll remember that the 4-day week model is the 180-100 model. So it's 100% pay for 80% of the work week in return for 100% productivity. And what we're finding with the South African companies is they're getting over 12%, and some are creeping closer to the 20% mark. But what is astonishing to see is that our well-being metrics are tracking very, very similarly to global pilots. In other words, we're seeing reduced stress, reduced negative sentiment, reduced work-family conflict, reduced levels of burnout. And then I think, you know, those good old bottom line markers: reduced staff attrition and turnover, less sick days taken, so a reduction in staff absenteeism, and just overwhelmingly positive results coming from the first cohort of South African participants, in spite of all of the socioeconomic conditions, those of which, you know, Monique just pointed out, with load shedding and the energy crisis, the taxi crisis. But it hasn't been without challenges. And you know, we can always discuss those, but we are definitely looking for a brave new set of pioneers to follow suit with the next cohort coming up.
I suppose the ultimate test will be how many of those 28 South African companies and the 1 Botswana company, how many are planning to stay with a 4-day week when their pilot ends? Have they indicated at this point?
At this stage, yes, we're sitting with 94% indicating that they are wanting to continue. So bearing in mind these are still qualitative results, and Boston College and Stellenbosch Business still need to do the overall final end-of-line surveys that are going out actually at the end of this month. So we'll know at the end of it what the final verdict is. But if you want a global benchmark, 92% of organizations that have participated in previous trials have opted to stay on the 4-day week going forward. So, you know, we're seeing the same and similar trends emerging from the South African businesses, albeit they are approaching the reduced hours working in slightly different ways.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's where the challenges come in. So talk to me about what the challenges have been, because from what you're saying, the benefits are clear, but where are the challenges?
Sally, you know, we all noted a particular challenge in the month of April, and I think that presented us with a whole month of 4-day weeks for all businesses across South Africa. And, you know, the pilot participants said that when there was increased workload and intensity, specifically around month-end cycles, so for example, if you were in a tax and advisory business, and you know, you'd already lost a couple of days in the month, that the work intensity would increase when you were under pressure from bank holidays or public holidays getting in the way. So that was definitely, April was a reset month, and we found that many of our participants sort of went into May and June going, all right, we need to get back into the flow of things. We need to rejig the hours that we're working. So a lot of organizations had to not take the 4-day week in addition to the bank holidays or the public holidays that they were already taking, and they found it difficult to keep abreast of the high intensity of work, and that was particularly prevalent in Stratcom cycles, for example, in our communication agencies that were participating. However, they've all noted that they have sort of reset themselves after that April and into May sort of blip, as we call it. And they're all still refining and optimizing their progression towards that sort of 32-hour week mark, which is what we're hoping to achieve. And I think, Sally, the biggest learning, certainly from the research that I've had feedback from Professor Mark Smith from Stellenbosch Business School and Juliet and her team from Boston College, is it's a lot of time was wasted under poor processes, bad meeting plannings, meetings that are meetings about meetings about meetings about meetings. We all have those. So just pilot participants really highlighting the need to go back to good work practices, good systems, refining their time management, and then compelling evidence to show improvements in culture, sentiment, and above all, trust. So those are the encouraging results that we're starting to see coming through.
I have to ask about working from home, because that, of course, is something that really came to the fore during COVID for obvious practical reasons. But are any of your companies working with a work from home model as well as a 4-day week?
Yes, Sally, we've got a combination of fully remote, hybrid, and those organizations that have actually returned to work full time. So we have a real cross-section of organizations with different approaches to flexible work arrangements. So we are finding that, in the general marketplace, people are getting confused between flexible work and reduced hours working. So these organizations really have already embraced the idea of flexibility and adaptive working within their work environments, and are using the reduced hours working as an additional sort of employee value proposition, really, where the employees are gifted that 5th day off to rest and recover. And I think it's also important to note, Sally, that one of the interesting findings is that we're seeing South African companies not taking that additional reduced hours working as a Friday or a Monday off. South African companies have been a lot more creative with how they approach that 20% reduction in the work week. So we've seen Wednesdays, we've seen fortnightlies, we've seen 2 half days. In fact, we've seen a lot of our single moms and working parents are in fact translating it into daily hours off the day. In other words, I'll go into work early and I'll come home early. So just collecting and banking those working hours or reduced working hours over the period of an entire week. So yes, not to be confused with flexible work, but most of these organizations already have a very, very good handle on what their flexible work policies are.
Well, it's very encouraging. I look forward to hearing about the results when the first study is completely over. And of course, you're now getting your second study going from September. So good luck with that. And thank you very much for the update. That was the 4-day week director for South Africa, Karen Lowe. And it seems that 94% of the companies at this point seem that they're going to continue with this model. They've just worked out how to have shorter meetings and be a little bit more efficient. Sounds very interesting.